everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer. Race number 10 at Kentucky Downs on Saturday. Wide open edition of the Turf Sprint. It's a $1 million race going 3/4 of a mile. Let's take a peek at this field. Grade 2, we've got 12 in the body of the race. The 13 counter strike is entered main track only. The one-timer, the 8 no bells, both trained by Larry Ravelli, both talented turf sprinters in their own right. They both run some fast races this year. I talked to Ravelli earlier on Thursday. He said he's 50-50 whether he's going to run the 8 in this race because he also has Colonial Downs on the radar as well.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like the kind of uncoupled entry that a trainer would run in this kind of race thing, because they're both really good and either one of them could be very effective in here, but they're also both speed horses, and I doubt Ravelli wants them hooking up going 6.5.
But there's the $1 million purse. Ravelli told me the purse of this race, of course, is very, very appealing. At Colonial, he doesn't have to run against one-timer, and he has to go a shorter distance, which might help this horse because he's speed, as we see from the Timeform US pace projector. The number 8, No Bells, expected to get to the front. Noble Reflection, the 11, is a horse with good speed. The one-timer, I think he's the kind of horse, Mike, that he really wants to get close to the pace, and I have a feeling he's going to be sent from the rail.
Yeah, I thought he would for sure show speed in this race, but it's definitely, as far as the pace projector is concerned, I mean, it's hard to argue with Noble Reflection being a horse who's going to be forward in this race, outside post, and he's shown speed in basically all of his races.
One-timer, the number 1, is extremely hard to knock. He is the win already at Kentucky Downs. He won the Franklin Simpson last year, going 6.5 furlongs, and he won that race very easily. And he's coming into this spot off a 104 buyer effort at Ellis Park, a race where he sat just off another horse, made the lead in the stretch, and kept grinding it out. It looks like he's in very good form. You don't worry about the 3/4. Again, lots to like.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you don't have to really. I mean, you look at his form this year, and he's run 2 really fast races, 5 and 5.5 furlongs. So if with some horses you would worry about that, but then you look at this horse, and last year he won 2 stakes races, 6 and 6.5, and one of those on this turf course with a 99 buyer speed figure. I mean, he's a super dangerous horse in this race, and he's even more dangerous if his stablemate scratches.
Front Run the Fed just missed in this race back in 2020. He earned a 101 buyer speed figure. Back then, he was trained by Chad Brown. He has kept consistent form recently, winning 2 of his last 3 starts against weaker, including last time out at Colonial Downs, a race where he settled at the back of the pack behind a lively pace and was able to run them down. So he got a setup that day.
He did. I liked the race that he ran that day. More than anything else, Dan, he's just one of those horses that he's super reliable. He may not win that often, but he's just super reliable. He always shows up. He is going to need a trip if he's going to be most effective, but there should be some pace to set up this horse's late run. Personally, I like to bet him at prices. When he takes money in his races, I'm happy to leave him out. But if he's around that 12-1 morning line, I could use him.
The 3 Olympic Runner, I think, is a horse you might want to consider at a price because he has plenty of back form. He won the Grade 2 King Eddie going a 1-turn mile at Woodbine, and he returned off a little bit of a layoff last time out at Colonial going 5.5. And maybe that 5.5 is a little short for him, but he stormed through the stretch to win that race. Maybe he just needed the layoff. I like him better at 6.5, especially in a race with some pace.
Yeah, I do too. I've always liked him going a little bit shorter, and that's sort of like the middle sprint distances, maybe between 6 and 7. And he did look good winning last time off of a really good trip against a weaker field. I'm with you though, Dan. I think his 2023 form is actually really good, and I think it's getting better. He really didn't get to run at all last year. I think he just needed a couple starts to shake the rust off. He's been good in his recent starts.
Bad Beat Brian looked tremendous last year at Kentucky Downs. I know it was a weaker allowance race, went right to the front and just dominated throughout. Now, maybe that trip's not available to him in here, but he continues to race in good form. His last race was a first start off a little bit of a layoff, and while no match for one-timer, he ran on well for 3rd. I'm hoping, as a Bad Beat Brian fan, that maybe he was a little bit short because from a trip standpoint, I didn't see much of an excuse.
Yeah, me either. But he was off a little bit of a layoff there. So maybe he needed it, and maybe they were prepping for this race because they know that he runs well at Kentucky Downs. So those are positives. I mean, he's another horse. He's very consistent. I think he can get the right trip in this race, Dan. I'm a little concerned that he might find races like this just to be a little bit too tough. I mean, he has a couple of recent wins, but they're against allowance horses. And when they run him in those stakes races, he's been close a couple times, but he rarely gets the job done.
I think the 5 Anaconda is a very interesting horse turning back in distance, because if you look at his races going 6 and 7 on turf, for the most part, they're all good ever since Joe Sharp took over. Now, his last 2 races were going a mile, one at Belmont in the poker. He got beat less than a length. I didn't like the poker as a race, but I think that distance is a little bit far for him. Last time out in the Kelso, probably in too tough against the likes of Casa Creed. Class relief, distance relief. He runs on late. He has proven winning experience over this track.
Yeah, he is not that hard to make a case for in this race. And what I like most about him, Dan, is he's a super handy horse. He always gets good trips in his races. So I think he'll get another one here. I'm very, very concerned about the Kelso last time. Your point's well taken. Casa Creed, Annapolis, it was a really good field. It was terrible in that race. He went into that race in really good form, and he didn't run a step in there. I don't know what his excuse was. I will just point out, though, that turf course listed as firm, that turf was not firm that day. So maybe that's an excuse for him.
Illman is the number 6. He's taken a little bit of a step up in class, a little bit of a step up in distance, but he is in good form for a good trainer in Joe Orsino. John Velasquez picks up the mount. He's won 2 of his last 3, including the select going 5.5 furlongs at Monmouth, and he's got a long way to come at about the 3/16, Mike, but he shows off a pretty determined stretch kick to get there.
Yeah, he's a really game winner of this race. It's a really solid effort for this horse. I'm with you. His recent form is actually pretty solid. I don't know that I thought it made him, a super strong contender in this race, but he's supposed to be a price.
Cogburn, the number 7, has just taken his game to another level since being switched to the turf by Steve Asmussen. He is 3 for 3 and he earned a graded stakes win at Saratoga. The Troy against Nobels. This is a very soft turf course. Nobels got the lead turning into the stretch. Cogburn had a decent trip, worked out a pocket, got to the outside, and Cogburn is able to grind down again Nobels. I'm not sure either one of these horses really relished the soft turf. Cogburn, I think, liked it a little more.
Yeah, maybe, but you're going to see Cogburn here even at the end of this race. Then he's going to bobble a couple of times, which, suggests that maybe he didn't like it that much either. But he ran right through it. I like all 3 of his turf starts, particularly that one that we just watched, because he stayed a little bit closer to the pace. He got out of the gate well for the first time. His first 2 turf ones, he did not get out of the gate well at all. He got out of the gate well last time. He sat a better trip. He finished strong. I like all 3 of the turf starts from this horse.
He's very tactical. He can sit any kind of a trip, adaptable to any kind of pace situation. Nobels is up next. Questionable whether he'll run in this race. He was a graded stakes winner at Churchill Downs Derby week. He then won a stake at Horseshoe Indianapolis, a race where he just towered over the field on paper. And in his last start, I talked to Ravelli, and Ravelli said the jock got off him and said, "You win on firm turf. This horse just couldn't dig in the final 16th of a mile." So maybe with some firmer turf, we'll see Nobels here go to the front or sit just off the pace. From his form, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, it really does. His form is very, very good. He's got really good speed. If they run him here, he's a super dangerous horse. He ran fine in the Troy last time. I thought he was second best, Dan, but maybe the soft turf is a valid excuse.
Gear Jockey, the number 9, looked so good winning this race back in 2021. He popped a triple-digit Beyer speed figure. He showed more early speed than he usually does. He just looked like a horse that relished Kentucky Downs. I think the question we all have to ask ourselves, and at 30-1, maybe it's just worth not even asking and taking a shot. Can this horse run anymore? His recent form isn't good.
Yeah, I don't think I could play him off of his recent form, but your point's well taken. He did run really well in his only Kentucky Downs appearance. So maybe, getting back over this turf course, which some horses will handle and some won't, maybe it'll lead to a turnaround for him. It had better. His last couple of races are really bad, but we know he's better than that, Dan, when things go right for him.
And maybe he needed his last race. It was his first start off of a lengthy layoff. Dream Shake is up next. This horse in very good form for trainer Michael Stidham. They gelded him off of a lengthy layoff. He's won 2 in a row, including this race going 7/8 at Woodbine. This is the Connaught Cup. And what I like about this horse is he's very tactical. He placed himself just off the leader. When it was time to go, he went, and he did it at a price.
Yeah, he did. He set a perfect trip in this race, just sitting behind a 40-1 shot on the lead. He takes over easily, Dan, and now he can't get away from this field at the end. He's not ever going to be really threatened in the late stages, but he just can't get any separation. I'm not sure how I really feel about this performance. He ran fine. At least it showed that he can handle the turf courses. I guess that's a good thing. I really like him as a dirt horse. I'm not sure I like him as much on this surface.
Noble reflection, the number 11 brings some Southern California speed to the party, and he could hurt a horse like the 1 or the 8 or anybody else that wants to go to the lead because he is fast. He showed that 2 starts back going 5.5 at Santa Anita, winning in gate to wire fashion. He showed speed last time out going 5/8 at Del Mar. He got tired. The 6.5, I'm not worried about it. He's done well going down the hill. It's just a question of whether he can get a little bit of a breather on the turn.
Yeah, I wonder if this trip can really work out for him in here because there is some speed to his inside if this field stays intact. So that concerns me more than anything else. He's obviously in good form right now, Dan. I'm not going to worry about the added distance for this horse. I just wonder if this is the right spot for him.
Although Dr. Zemf has never raced at Kentucky Downs, I'm going to gamble that he'll like the surface. He's a group stakes winner going 7/8 overseas. We probably had to contend with similar dips and dives and peaks and valleys that the European configuration course at Kentucky Downs is likely to offer. He's shown hints in some of his races here in North America for Chad Brown. They cut him back in the Jaipur last time out. I thought Flavien Prat was very conservative with him in the opening quarter mile, just sort of rating him back to mid-pack. He wound up in and among horses. He got out and he was running on a little bit at the end. Give him a race with a little bit more pace and produce him earlier. I think he has a chance.
That's how I looked at him too. I mean, his Jaipur was fine, and I don't think he had a huge excuse in there, but he did wind up, as you said, in and among horses, and he had to wait for Casa Creed to clear him past mid-stretch before he got a chance to run, and then he ran on at the end of the race. I thought he ran fine in there against a really good field. I really liked his first start in this country for Chad Brown. I know it was only an allowance race, but he looked good winning that day. And he gets a pass for the maker's mark because he would not rate, and they had to send him to the lead that day against a way better field. I don't care about that race. I like this distance for him, Dan. I think he gets the right trip in this race. He's a fair price on the morning line. We'll see if he winds up around there for Chad and Irad, but this is a good spot for this horse, I think.
Counter strikes on the AE list. Great claim. They took the source for 15. They've really moved him up. Now he's going to have to do it against tougher horses. Let's take a look at our top picks for the turf sprint. You're going with Dr. Zemfin here. I agree with you. I picked No Bells based on his current form, his good early speed. Something tells me he's going to run Colonial. I don't think Ravelli's going to run his 2 horses against each other. If he scratches, I'm with you. I think Dr. Zemf has found a spot where he could finally achieve his potential.
Yeah, me too. I'm just going to hope that the morning line's close to right there because he's not the kind of horse I would want to bet at any kind of, shorter price. But if he's around that morning line, I'll take a shot with him. I got Olympic Runner in there, the 3 also. I like the shorter distance for him. I think he'll get the right trip in here too.
12-3-5-7 for Mike. I'm going to concentrate on the 8 and the 12 with the 1 and the 7 underneath in the turf sprint at the Downs on Saturday. Good luck.